Hello and welcome to Newsnight. I am Ladi Akeredoluale. Thanks for being with us today. The national debate on the way forward for the country in terms of growth and development continues. While some are asking for a change in the nation's governance structure, others ask how that can be done even when there's an existing structure in place. My guest is elder statesman and former presidential advisor Alhaji Tanko Yakasai. Alhaji Yakasai, thank you for your time. Welcome.
You're welcome.
Just before this interview, I was reading a comment reported that the Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai made about political leadership.
Yes.
He's reported to have said that many good people have stayed away from Nigerian politics because they say they don't want to be stained by the mud and so on. But that if good people stay away, then who do they expect will take political leadership? Has that been your experience?
Well, that is true, but there's reason for whatever happens. You see, the problem started with the way political parties are run in Nigeria today, as different from the way political parties were run before. Before, it was an honor to be a politician. Great honor. You earn respect everywhere. It's not the case around this time. Why? Because at the beginning, the politicians struggled for the country, not for themselves. Fought for independence initially. Then when independence was approaching, they started to think of the next level of the struggle, what to do after you gain independence. So they begin to plan for post-independent Nigeria, what to do to their people all over the country. Now, gradually, and I don't want anybody to mistake me for making this statement simply because I'm a politician. No, I'm just making a statement because I happen to watch the deterioration of the quality in politics from time to time. When the period of General Babangida started to do their transition program, they thought of people who have money, the so-called money banks, whether they can hijack the process. And in order to deal with that problem, they decided to fund the activities of political parties. It was done with the best of intention, no doubt about it. But unfortunately, to every positive thing, there is a negative consequence. It was positive to provide funds so that you deprive money banks from hijacking the process. But in providing funds for political parties, then you entice people who are attracted by politics with the money that is attached to the activities. Now, anybody who is looking, I can tell you without fear of contradiction, to be elected into an elective office, either as councillor, local government chairman, member of state or national assembly, a governor or a president, has something right inside his mind about the benefit he's going to get out of it. So automatically, joining party or partisan politics has changed from service for the country into service for your own selfish interest.
Those who will be listening to you
Yes.
will take it from the position that, having been a practitioner, and please correct me if I'm wrong,
Yes.
you've been a practicing politician for well over 7 decades.
Yes.
And in that time,
Yes.
what you've described is
Yes.
what you feel has happened.
Yes.
Now, today,
Yes.
even the basics that politicians used to accept
Yes.
as their covenant with the people, that is, you put me in the office,
Yes.
I deliver.
I work.
I work for you. One of the standing pillars of democracy.
Yes.
In our experience in the last 20 years
Yes.
that you've watched,
Yes.
you participated in our earlier
Yes.
attempt at
Yes.
democracy,
Yes.
which didn't last this long.
Yes.
But this time,
Yes.
is there something different about it this time that you think has either made it endure this long or will make it endure even further than it has now? That is different from the first time we tried to do it
Yes.
under the Second Republic
Yeah.
with the late Alhaji Shehu Shagari.
Yes.
Is
Even
it
before
different?
Shagari. Well, at the time when we started, ordinary members of party were prepared to make sacrifice. Those who were prepared to give their time, gave their time. Those who could not give their time provided funds. People contributed money. If you are joining a political party, you'll pay for the membership card of the party. Then after a membership card, you pay a monthly subscription. Then the well-to-do supporters of the party will contribute generously to make up for the needs of the party. Now it's not the case. It's a total difference. So because of that, now the fear which Babangida regime was entertaining now has come to reality, that because members of the political parties were not prepared to make sacrifice to contribute, it now turned out to be only those who can afford to provide money will be able to be candidates, because somebody who has no money cannot be a candidate today. And this is the problem with the system. Anybody going into public office, elective office, does so on the basis of the weight of his pockets. What can he afford? If it is local government councillor, yes, he will prepare his money for that. Chairman, yes. Assembly, state or national, yes. Governor or president. Even if you don't have money, you must have some people with money to back you up. Otherwise, you will not attempt it. So this is the situation now. And it's the reality of the situation. This is the reason why people who are competent, who are committed, are now driven away from the system. People, some who can afford, yes, may be competent, but only those who can afford to pay will be able to come forward for any elective office.
Now, coming to the present, there's been loud agitation
Yes.
that something needs to be done about the way things are,
Yes.
are happening.
Yeah.
And one of the things that some people have advocated is that there needs to be a rejigging of the system as it is, that because in their view it's not working as it is. What it is producing as outcomes is not completely positive. The general narrative is that the northern part of Nigeria likes things the way they are. And that it is the southern part of the country from where many of these agitations for changes are coming. I watched you on one of our sister programs
Yes.
where you were on with Chief Edwin Clark.
Yes.
And One of the things you said then, one of the questions you asked, which Chief Clark then tried to explain,
Yes.
was about the form that restructuring would take
Yes.
when it is talked about.
Yes.
And you said, well, if what he said was what that meant,
Yes.
then you would agree with that.
Yes.
But you emphasized that you were speaking for yourself
Yes.
and not for the North.
Yes.
But you're one of those
Yes.
who is a Northern leader. So I left the question,
Yes.
why did you have to emphasize that you were speaking for yourself, not for the North? Because
Yes.
in the North,
Yes.
the political firmament is such that it is a group
Yes.
of which you are a prominent member
Yes.
that speaks for the North anyway.
Yes.
So why did you make that differential?
Well, let me go back to the issue which Chief Clark raised. You know, his response to me was an impromptu one. It was not a well thought out response. It was just, he was a lawyer. You can be sure of them that they have read the answer all the time. But there was never a time when either Chief Clark or any other person, Adebanjo, Anyaku, or anybody else, who used that argument that it was the recommendation of 2014 conference that formed the contents of restructuring Nigeria. Because that was the input. You agree with
I'm following you.
Yes. So I said, if that is what, because the 2014 conference, all the recommendations were adopted by unanimous consent of the delegates. And therefore there was no time when there was a division on any of the recommendations. So you can say by and large, the recommendation, over 300 of that conference was the expression of the delegates of that conference. It has never been argued that way. I have been in Nigeria, like also you have been, even when we were only two units, southern and northern protectorates. And then when we became three, one western region was separated from the east, and then when we became 12 states, four regions.
4 regions, then 12
then
states.
12 states, then 19, then 21, then 31, then 36. All this, in my opinion, are a process of restructuring. Now, if we can change from one to another, how many times? About 5 or 6 times. We've been changing the structure. And even we went to the extent of changing parliamentary system into a presidential system. And yet, we have not gotten right. It means that the problem is not that of structure. We should begin to look for why the problem is there. You see, but if they think that it is the problem, by fear it is. I said it at that time, that when APC was presenting Buhari, they came with a slogan of change. Small boys, they talk about change. Everybody, villages, everywhere, all over the country, north, south, they talk about change. I didn't talk about change because I was asking as to what is the content of the change. But I was not close to them. And in any case, it was like a lone voice, even if I would ask the question. So now we've gotten the APC and Buhari into power. We are in the 5th year now. No change, in my opinion. But I don't know whether you differ with me, but this is my opinion. Think of the electricity supply in the country. Think of anything. What has changed from 2015 to date in our lifetime, in our security matter, whatever it is, to my mind? there is no change for the better. So this is the reason why I now want to alert Nigerians that when people come with slogan, for them to define so that you can hold them responsible for their undertaking, for their promise. You will force them to perform. And when they fail, you'll be able to point out to them that they have not performed, they have not delivered. So this is the point that I was trying to make, that people who are agitating for restructuring Nigeria should please endeavor to define what restructuring Nigeria would look like. You see, as you talk to me, I have 19 children alive, 4 died. 19 children have given me 40 grandchildren. Altogether, we are 60. I'm a grandfather to 40 children, a father to 19. Together with me, not to talk of my wife, we are 60. So what are you going to do with us, 60 people, when you restructure Nigeria? I'm just talking of myself, not to talk also of the country as a whole. So I think we should learn to understand that slogan should not be the driving force in electing people into power. They should be made to define, to articulate what they want to do, so that you know exactly in 3 to 5 years' time from now what Nigeria will look like. This is my concern. Now, I don't want politicians to come and brag with slogan, high-sounding slogan, change, restructuring, and what have you. Only in the end, 5 years, no change. there you are. So this is what I'm trying to alert. I'm 93. By December, I'll be 94. I know I will soon go, although I would prefer to wait for you to come. But my fear is that don't let me go away. My 49 people, my grandchildren, my children, will be left in a dilemma that they supported something that they don't know what it will translate into.
We've spent this part of the interview talking largely about the past and where we went wrong. But let me bring you to the current situation now. People are talking about 2023 now. 2019 elections having been concluded. There are those who argue that there's been a gentleman's agreement, which has largely been responsible for why there's been relative calm in the last 20 years of democracy, of rotating the leadership position of the country between the North and the South. Expectedly, because of that, there are those who say, well, 2023, it's supposed to return to the South. But there are those who are also saying that while that may have been useful, it was the decision of a group of people. It didn't reflect the decision of the whole country. And that it is anti-democratic to insist that the leader of the country must come from just one place. Essentially, they're saying that we should jettison it. From your own viewpoint, having so many years in this game, what do you think?
I will answer you, but let me just make a little correction. You said before we enter into this level stage, you said what we discussed was for government.
To solve, yes, the issue of what to do with the population.
But I want to add that not only government, but also traditional rulers, they have a very important role to play, making sure that their people are educated, that job is created for their people, and so on. If they inculcate into their people this idea of getting education, getting job, the issue will be, the situation will be different. I'll go back to your question now about rotation and so on. See, unfortunately, in Nigeria, we are in a hurry. We lack patience. We also sometimes act without foresight. I happen to be a founding member of the National Party of Nigeria, NPN. I've been a member throughout the life of that party. NPN started, it was, in my opinion, the best political party that belonged to all of Nigerians. No section of Nigeria would say that NPN belonged to him or individual. The Yorubas, the Igbos, the Hausas, the Biram, everybody who was in NPN accepted NPN as his own party. So NPN introduced a program of zoning and rotation. And the idea emanated from a few people. Then it was submitted to the executive committee of the party, and it adopted it. We started doing it. Unfortunately, our ambitious military young men threw away the system, turned themselves into rulers, to enter into record as leaders, president, governors, and whatever. Now, they overthrew the system. We came back to the Second Republic. The remnants of the leadership of the First Republic were still active. People like Shagari, B.C. Onabanjo, Latif Jekande, myself, and the rest of us were there. So we started to reconnect what we started in the First Republic. Now, we agreed to continue from where our leaders left off. This is the reason why this issue of rotation and so on came. It was accepted, not by all the political parties, but by and large. This is the basis upon which NPN succeeded. Northerner will be head of state, and it was the consensus of the members of the National Executive Committee of the NPN that the North should produce the presidential candidate, that the East should produce the running mate, that the West should produce the national chairman of the party. It was by consensus. Nobody complained against it. Minority, majority. So now we started it. We did round one. And because of impatience of our people, they felt that this rotation would take a long time. So they came and took over the power.
You're referring to the military?
The military, who took over power? They took them. They threw. If we had allowed this system to continue, this rotation, everybody would have had the opportunity of producing the president who will do 2 terms without any trouble. They took over. And what is paining me is that they didn't have anything to show for it. They had no program, they had no plan, nothing whatsoever. Now see where we are. See where we are. Just about a year ago, I used to enjoy about 8 to 12 hours of electricity in my house in Kano. Today it's down to 6 hours. It's down to 6. Ask anybody. In Kano, I don't know what is happening here. Well, it's Abuja, maybe because it's the seat of government, but I don't know what is happening in Lagos or in Enugu or in Port Harcourt and so on. But certainly, people in Kano are not getting as much light, as much electricity as they used to get 5 years ago. So, this is the problem. People are impatient. If we had allowed Shagari to complete his second term. He has won his second term election. Undoubtedly, barring unforeseen circumstances, Ekweme would have been the next president. The Southeast would have produced the president who will serve for his 2 terms. And then it would have gone to another place, Southwest, and then it will go to another South-South, and to northern minorities and so on. In fact, when Sani Abacha was the head of state, and this system was recommended to him, initially somebody incited him against it. And I happened to be one of those who convinced him that it's a good thing for Nigeria. Then it was Sani Abacha. At that time we had president, vice president, speaker, senate president. It was Sani Abacha who said, well, but the number would not go round. It was him, in fairness to him, he's there. He said, we should have prime minister, we should have deputy prime minister. I was advocating for French system, but in the French system there is no deputy prime minister. He suggested, he said then there should be 6 officers to go around the 6 geopolitical zone. You know, 1995 Constitutional Conference suggested or recommended geopolitical zone, the 6th one that we are now having in the country. They are not formally incorporated into our
Into the Constitution.
But by and large, it's a consensus in the country that the country has no problem with it. So he said, let 5 years for each. Let the tenure of the president be 5 years. 5 years into 6, that will be 30 years. From that time, today, we could have gone far. We will be at the tail end of the rotation. And what is bringing about this problem is that when people use their money to get into power, they like to recoup their investments. They like to amortize their investment and make profits. This is the problem now. So this is the reason why the office of the president, because of the enormous responsibility of the federal government, is attractive. People wanted that office not because they are prepared for it, but because one way or the other, they will benefit somehow. So this is the problem. I think in this country, we need to begin to think far ahead.
In your answer to one of the earlier questions, you mentioned the late head of state, General Sani Abacha.
Yes.
You related very closely to him.
Indeed.
You were one of the few
Yes.
who had direct access to him.
That's true.
What type of a leader was he? Because many Nigerians now,
Yes.
of course, the vast majority of those who are Nigerian citizens now
Yes.
were not alive
Yes.
when General Sani Abacha was
Yes.
head of state.
Yes.
And so they have to rely on accounts
Yes.
of the type of person that he was.
Yes. Yes.
And some of those accounts are not very complimentary.
Comfortable. Yes.
What type of a person was he?
Well, I told you how he initiated the idea of having a prime minister and deputy prime minister so that there will be 6 public offices to go around. He was a very intelligent person. I don't care about his problems. My relationship with Sani Abacha stemmed from the relationship between his father and my father. His father came to Kano from Borno. My father went to Kano from Adama. Generally at that time, people who are not indigenous of Kano tend to befriend one another. So the result was that his father was a friend to my father, and when I was young, I knew how very close they are. Then I think Sani Abacha also have some idea about the relationship between our parents. So when he became the head of state, he sent for me. He set up a committee with MD Yusuf,
Former Inspector General.
yes, SG Ikoku. At that time, MD Yusuf was no longer in
Inspector
service.
General, of course.
Myself, 3 of us. He said he wanted to be consulting with us. He wanted something. And we suggested something differently. And he accepted it. Now, he wanted to do constitutional conference. And he wanted an input from us. The 3 of us recommended that he should get part of it elected, majority, and part of it nominated, like what happened before. So he accepted the idea, he implemented it. So from that time, on and off, whenever he wanted something, he will involve me or SG Ikoku or MD Yusuf. So this is how we related with one another. But I found him to be a listening somebody. You go to Sani Abacha, he will give you an assignment. You go and do your assignment. You come to report to him. And instead of becoming the boss, he will change himself into a part and parcel of your committee that is make recommendation. So you will discuss freely what is the merit of A. You explain to him, he will bring his own idea. Whichever idea is accepted by the meeting will be adopted, and so on and so forth. That was the type of person he is. But so Sani Abacha was a listening person, as far as I'm concerned, but he was really a true military person. His colleagues respect him very much.
In fact, so as you said, some of his colleagues did point out that he was outstanding in that respect. Now, but I asked that question because I want to use it to bring us to the present and the issue of tackling challenges.
Of
general challenges.
Challenges. Mm-hmm.
One of the things for which General Abacha was known was that he was a very decisive person. When he made up his mind, he took action.
No doubt.
And he took action immediately. That's the report, and that's what the records indicate. We have quite a number of challenges at this point. And this government has tried to tackle some of them. If I take, for example, the herdsman farmers clashes, the banditry and armed robbery and kidnapping, particularly in the northern parts of the country. There have been attempts to solve it one way or the other. In the case of the farmers, herdsmen, some of the solutions proposed include the Ruga ranching option, the National Livestock Transformation Plan, but that seems to have divided the country because some allege it's been politicized and that therefore different people have taken different positions on the matter. Do you think that one in particular is being handled properly?
Well, what I was told was that when the government thought of that idea, it was presented at the either National Economic Council or
yes.
And it was made clear that governors were free to choose to adopt the system if they so wish. Those who are not interested are not to be compelled. But unfortunately, it was, like you said, politicized because it could have been done without all the noise. Those who are interested could have chosen it. Those who are not interested, they could have said they are not interested. That will be the end of the story.
But could it have been like that, Alaji? Because Headsmen are everywhere. People following their cows are everywhere. So it's not exactly as if it was just, it was a solution to a national problem that was being proposed. So
Yes.
if you opted in or opted out, you were exercising discretion which may or may not affect the safety of your own people.
What is important is this, that option is given, and people were free to take whichever option is acceptable to them. The livestock is a national asset. We need it. If we don't have, we have to import. No doubt about it. So it's not a liability. It's the question of how we manage it. Now, do we hear about this problem again? We don't. The herders are not driving their herds now to area where they are not wanted. They stay in the area where they are welcome. The whole trouble that started has now died a natural death. There may be some remnants of his thinking, but it's not as contentious as it used to be. I don't know if either Jesus or Muhammad were created in Nigeria in our present day time. None of them would have been free from being involved in politics.
Why do you say that?
Because in simple thing, take for instance, this is question of rotation. It's a fair idea. But see how it became controversial. That when you take, I take, and that one will take, and that one will take. Simple arithmetic. Is this Switzerland or somewhere? They are operating it, no trouble. And Nigeria, when they introduced it, it became a problem. So I know that it is difficult to introduce something in Nigeria without that thing becoming controversial. But why? It is because the politicians who are running the government in the country have no program. If they have program, MPN when they came, they say food and shelter. The attention of everybody went there. Go to every local government of that time. There is a place called Shagari Quarters. There's one in Kano, there's one in Maiduguri, one. So people will concentrate their attention on the program of government. But so we have a lot of idle mind now in Nigeria because there's no program. Government is not engaging everybody into a productive ideas that will change the narrative for the better. So I will appeal that let us have a concrete program that will transform Nigeria into a better place for everybody. Then people will concentrate on areas where the country will benefit more than areas where the country will not benefit. But this is our nature, and there's nothing we can do about it.
Moving on to the economy.
Yes.
Some of those who have sat in the chair that you are sitting now for this interview have pointed out that there's a link between many of the challenges that we have, particularly security challenges.
Yes.
And the economy, how the economy is doing. That because if there's a lot of poverty and so on, then that will definitely have impact on the level of crime in the country. Yes. So that brings me to the question of equity in terms of the economy. Many ask the question that as the country is presently constituted, as the federation is presently constituted, it does appear that there's a skewness that benefits some parts more than others, and that those who are in fact generating quite a great deal of revenue are not getting returns commensurate with that revenue.
Yes.
In the case of revenue allocation, they talk about the fact that the federal government, whose duties are supposed to be limited under a federation, gets the largest chunk of the budget of the allocation, while states and local governments who are closer to the people and who have more to do for the people get less. This has been a recurring argument all along. What's your take?
Well, according to our constitution, revenue allocation is the responsibility of the National Assembly. The division of revenue is to what percentage should go to where. The revenue allocation adopted by Nigeria was adopted by National Assembly, where everybody was represented. And there was no dispute, no section of the country complained against the formula we adopted. If we need to change it, we should go back there and recommend changes. There is a misconception in the country. In the first place, the people you said are generating the revenue. They are not generating the revenue.
How so?
They didn't work for it. By the time they appeared in Nigeria, the source of the revenue is there. They met it there. They didn't put in any effort to make it there. You see, when agriculture was the mainstay of our economy, the agreement by consensus of the national leaders was that 50% of the revenue should go to the generating areas. Why? Because they farm. We had cocoa farmer, granite farmer, cotton farmer, beneseed farmer, and what have you. The farmers work hard, they sweat, spend all their day under the sun, working in their farms. There is a common mistake made in Nigeria. We call some areas oil-producing states. They are not oil-producing states. They are oil-bearing states because they don't produce the oil. They made it there. They didn't put in any effort. So the argument that we should go back to 50%, which was agreed because of the effort put in there, and when no effort is being put in there now, and we want to go on the same argument, is wrong. You see, the revenue, the 13% given to oil-bearing states, to me, there's no oil-producing state, oil-bearing state. That is my own understanding of this issue. Was settled in the 1995, 94-95 Constitutional Conference. Here in Abuja, I was a member. The argument adduced at that time was that because of the oil activities, the land was distorted, was polluted, and their rivers also were polluted as well, and therefore they are not able to produce enough because of pollution. Which was the argument which the whole country accepted. That is true, that because of the oil extraction activities, there is a lot of pollution in the area where oil extraction is taking place. And also there are rivers. The fish they catch is not as many as if the river is not polluted. So the conference unanimously agreed that they should be compensated for that loss of revenue. So that was the basis upon which 13% was agreed to. Not because the oil belonged to them. Minerals in Nigeria belong to everybody, belong to Nigeria. Even the sea that we have is divided into portions. There is a portion which we call continental shelf.
Yes.
There is a portion which they call economic zone. Now, the continental shelf, it was agreed that 13% of the revenue generated in the continental shelf should go to littoral states, a state that is linked to that area.
That area.
But what is it happening now? That 13% of the totality of the revenue is given as derivation. There are people who know that is not what was agreed in 1994-95, but just to maintain peace in the country, they kept quiet. But now we should come to realize that this 13% derivation is not given because oil is discovered in an area. It is to compensate for the pollution of the area, either the land or the waters. If you get it in Sokoto, the same will apply. If you get it in Ekiti, the same will apply. So it is not a compensation because we have discovered oil in an area, because nobody put it there. All the people that are living in the oil-bearing areas did not make any effort to put the oil there or gas.
You will consider yourself lucky to have lived this long.
Yes, I do.
In fair health.
Yes.
But I wonder, when you sit down and you think back, do you think the effort, I mentioned it earlier in the interview when I talked about you having been in politics for well over 7 decades. Do you think the effort, because today you are still in it and you are still raising your voice after so long, do you think it's been worth it?
Yes. Yes, indeed. Indeed. Number one, we educate people. There are issues that are simple, but not everybody understands them. When you talk, this is the reason why some people are politicians, because they will educate people. They will bring an issue to the forefront so that people will understand, and will begin to understand and see how it can be implemented. I think you need people like that. It's very important. Most of the things that we are now enjoying were discovered by few individuals. The light, the aeroplane, and so on. But we are enjoying it. So it is important that we have people who talk about how a country should be governed, what the people of the country need, so that those in authority can provide for them. So the politicians can formulate an idea, sell it to the public. They may not be the people who will implement it, but the fact that they formulated the idea and sell it to the people will one day become materialized. This is the reason why the effort is worth it.
Alhaji Yakasai, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That's Newsnight. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.